Hello everyone, Peeps here. Passionate drop yesterday. We're going to look specifically at what that's going to look like for our druids. Um, Good news for druid is we're basically still okay. Uh, Plant Daddy, which is our strongest build, it's largely unchanged. You have to take a couple of different nodes, and it might not actually be worth pathing all the way over to Temper Minded now. Um, but there's still a gem slot there, so it's probably still worth it. Um, let's see. Energy showed recharge rate as a whole, got insanely gutted. Um, Ancestral Bond Keystone, instead of having no limit on totems, you'll now have a double limit. So if you had two on spell totem, you'll now get four. Um, Not the end of the world, not the greatest thing, but it will be fine. Um, Commanding Rage, 2% increased minion attack speed per 5 rage. It used to be a 1-to-1 exchange. Um, so now, if you do the bare minimum to get 60 rage, you're going to have 30% attack speed on your minions rather than that 60. So a bit of a nerf there, but they added in two new skill support gems that will give you splash damage on your minions. So it'll kind of offset your damage output, even if they're not hitting as fast. If they're hitting more things at one time, it's going to be a little less noticeable. Critical overload got a nice change. If you remember back to the crit graph, um, the more crit damage you have, the crit damage bonus you have is more effective than basically everything else. Um, and what they did on this critical overload passive is they took away the spell damage increase and they just made it 15% more crit damage bonus. Um, so as long as this top node of it doesn't change, you'll get 15% crit chance and 15% crit damage, which makes this node insanely valuable. Um, then we look at actual skill changes. Oil Barrage is the biggest one. Um, Mana cost is going down, but it's now going to cost mana per second equal to whatever the initial cost was. So if your initial cast is 100, it's going to be 100 mana per second to channel Oil Barrage, whereas right now it's 100 mana period, and you channel it until you run out of infusion. Um, they're also lowering the empowered forms damage 10%, and then they're changing how often you consume an infusion or power charge, infusion, power charge, whatever. Um, 1.5 seconds will be the new time. It was previously 2.5 seconds. And then if you uh, if you're running the gem, the support gem that lets you get more damage the longer you channel, up to I think it's 4 seconds. This is no change. You'll still get that full 4 seconds. Um, it'll just expire just after that full 4 second damage bonus kicks in. Align Fate, which is one of your Ascendancy passives for Oracle. Um, it gives you more damage, but I don't know who's actually using that. So I'm not sure if this is any good or not. At the end of the day, it's not going to be better than an inevitable critical. So probably nothing burger there. Flame Breath. This was interesting because Flame Breath already has this. In order to channel Flame Breath, you have to have Rage. You can channel it without Rage, and it'll give you a 2 or 3 second Flame Breath window. But if you have Rage, you can channel it for significantly longer. Um, so right now, the way Flame Breath's working is you build up your max rage, you cast your Flame Breath, you have the quality giving you longer before the degen starts, and then once the degen starts, it counts down your rage. When your rage ends, you drop out of the Flame Breath. So it's already doing this because Incinerate, you have to fill the meter. You can only cast it as long as your meter lasts. So unless they're removing the delayed start of the degen in this, I'm not sure what they're doing. Um, I mean, nothing in the nothing in the tooltip. I used Flame Breath all the way to level 85 or 95. So I'm not sure what they're changing here, because it already functions that way. So it's possible that it's a flavor thing, but we'll know more once this goes live and we can actually play with it. When it goes live, I'm gonna put Flame Breath back on my build and actually figure out what they changed here. Pounce. Cooldown. Pounce currently has a really big cooldown window that gets lower as you level, and they're changing it to a much smaller window. So you'll start off at 6 and it'll go down to 5.1. Whereas right now you start off at 9 and it goes to 4. So to make the early game feel better, and the early game won't, I'm sorry, the late game won't really change. So not terrible. It's actually really good for the early game because cooldown reduction is hard to come by. Rolling Magma is still in here. If you're using Rolling Magma, I'm sorry. There's better things. Um, Shred, 20% increased attack speed based on quality. So you're definitely going to want quality or Shred now. It used to be 10%. 20% is insane. And Shred's already a really good skill. So Thrashing Vines is just a flavor text update to clarify how often they spawn. Um, that was a little worrying at first, but it's not a functional change. Very nice. Wing Blast. Wing Blast is a really fun skill, especially because of how early you get it. So if you take Wing Blast, so it's a level 3 skill, right? So you get your Wing Blast, and then at your level 5 you get your Devour, and you use Devour to generate your power charges. So you dive in with Devour, face your mouse of the opposite way of where you want to go, and then Wing Blast out. The Wing Blast will be empowered, which will create a shockwave. That shockwave just got a 25% damage increase, which makes it one of the strongest uh, non-plant skills for Druid below like level 15. Like Wing Blast and in-game content clears packs. The Wing Blast, the Blast Shockwave in early game will also clear packs. It's really good. You just have to know where your mouse is at because it goes the opposite direction of that you're facing. So if you're point to click moving, you need to like point the opposite direction. But if you're WASDing, you just need to rotate your mouse so that your character's face follows the mouse, and then you wing blast backwards. White packs. It can also spawn uh, Herald of Lightning and some of the other Herald skills. It'll also trigger Herald of Ash. Um, it's a neat skill. So the 25% more damage, great. Volcano's base Volcano's base crit chance is going up. I don't know who was trying to build crit builds with Volcano, but you're getting better now. Um, that's also the only like fire bear-esque skill that was mentioned in this whole thing. So bears, no change to your builds. Lunar Blessings Moonbeams are no longer considered melee skills. It's going to be interesting to see what they tag them with. Because if they tag them in a way that makes them be able to scale off of spell damage, you can run Lunar Blessing as your like main thing and be able to drop Crown of Ice. Because right now, if you want to scale spell damage on any of the shapeshift stuff, you need Crown of Ice because most of our stuff are tagged as attack, and attacks are not spells. So it'll be interesting to see what new tag they give this. Um, Spell Totem can now be used while moving. This, in addition to, you can have 4 up at a time. Just a nice quality of life thing there. Diala's Desire is going to take you from the 10% increased uh, skill effect from quality to a 5%. Um, right now, we're using this on Entangle, and it gives you a 30% right now to spawn an additional Fissure. This will go to a 25% chance. Um, so 1 in every 4 will very likely spawn a Fissure. Right now, that math is like it's like 30%, so it's what 3.4 or so. So it's almost 4 anyway, right? You can't have half of a skill, so not really a change. You just may see less fissures, but plants are already so good that it doesn't matter. Um, Martial weapons, campaign drops are going to be better. Um, they're changing it so that if you get to Act 2 and you drop a talisman, that talisman theoretically is an upgrade on base damage because they're more likely now to be the highest base type available at that level. So you might have a better time finding upgrades for your martial weapon, which scales all of our damage in any shapeshift form. So that's a nice change. Um, Implicit modifiers on our talismans are changing. So her overall maximum rage from Rabid Fury Magi is dropping to 10. Um, the implicits on Voltfang and Thunder are now going to be 20 to 30 rather than 15 to 25. Um, Once this goes live next week, Thursday, Wednesday night, Thursday, somewhere in there, because it'll get preloaded and then the actual season will start. So it's going to get preloaded a couple days prior. So once this happens, if you want to update your stuff, just div orbit and it'll update it. Um, Maximum rage on your rubies can now be 2. So again, next week you can div orb these and change them. The things you don't want to div orb, brass stem. Um, I ran brass stem from the interlude all the way to like tier 13, tier 14 maps, just because it was that good. Um, so this getting a pretty big nerf, 500 to 600% increased armor rather than the 7 to 8. It'll still be 2,500 or so armor chest piece, but it's not going to be that 3,000 plus. Vertex. Vertex is dead. No longer gives you plus ranks to all skill gems. It's going to be curses only. It's getting a little bit of a buff for curses, so builds that run a lot of curses to trigger their COC stuff, um, they're they're okay, but it's still a massive nerf to this piece of equipment. Um, the next thing is going to be level of skills. So we all thought level of skills was going to get addressed. However, comma pause. No one thought that it would only be a one-sided addressing. So level of all skills for melee is being reduced. It used to be 7, now it's 5. Level of all projectiles reduced. Used to be 7, now it's 5. Um, and then perfect essence of battle is now only 3 on two-handed weapons. So our talismans, they used to be 5, which is insane. Um, the the difference in level of skills that you could get as in a shapeshift form versus say Plant Daddy is 10 to 15 levels. And they just gutted that smaller pool even further. So it'll be an interesting league for melee enjoyers. Um, I'm probably still going to level Wyvern if I end up doing a non-companion build. Um, I'll probably still level Wyvern, but Plant Daddy is hands down the strongest Druid build right now. Because there was no mention of the spell stuff. So you can still get the what is it on plus level of all physical spell skills still exist. Um, on your amulet, all spell skills still exist. So no real change there. Um, but also with your amulets, they did not remove projectile skills. They didn't really remove the melee stuff. They didn't touch amulets. They really focused on the weapons and the vertex. So not the end of the world. You're just losing a couple of levels. Instead of 35, you might get 33 and a very high end build for melee. Um, what else? Bug fixes. Uh, Rend had a bug. We all knew it was too good to be true. So Rend was scaling twice. When you went from level 1 to level 2, instead of getting 5 damage, you were getting 5 damage, and then you were getting 5 more damage. So they removed that second part and then brought up all of the base damage. Um, your base damage will be higher, but as you level, it won't feel. You won't go from like, oh, my Ren did 1500 to I leveled up and man, my Ren does 3000 now. It'll be like, oh, my Ren does 2100. Ren's still going to be really good. Ren is an insanely good skill for a base attack. Um, so it'll still be fine. They did change the empowered rend, so its bottom level of damage got brought up and its top level got brought down. Um, you almost never notice this top end of damage because you would just overkill everything anyway. I suspect that'll still be the thing. 400% increased base damage is still 400% increased base damage, and it'll be fine. You'll still cleave through entire packs. People will explode. Herald of Thunder will go nuts. It'll be a great time. Um, then they fixed a couple of bugs relating to Pounce and Arctic Howl. So Pounce was providing additional mark effect. That's not going to happen anymore. Um, Pounce's gem art didn't reflect it being a meta skill. Meta skills look different. It's a visual thing. No problem there. Um, Arctic Howl can no longer empower you in human form. And then Thunderstorm, which I had no idea was even a thing, can no longer be created out of bounds. I've never seen a Thunderstorm create off the map, but I guess it was a thing, and it's not a thing anymore. So, all in all, Druid's pretty good. We're in a pretty solid state. Uh, all of our builds are still viable. Um, Plant Daddy is still the pound for pound king of Druids, but everything else is still very, very viable. Um, Still be able to level really easily using Wyvern. Uh, you'll be able to level easy using wolf. Bear was already really good and it got no changes. Um, our late game is largely unaffected. Um, I think with a couple of the armor changes and the addition of the runic ward, I think we'll have more survivability, which will make some of the builds that felt hard to play, like Oil Barrage on tier 16 maps, it'll just make it easier from purely like Wyvern's perspective. If you were doing the run around as a wolf, pounce, spawn minions, do the big slash thing where you froze things and then you did all the Herald of Ice chaining, that build was already really good and that build hasn't really changed. But if you're playing like one of the pure, if you're a pure Wyvern, pure Wolf, pure Bear, I think you'll feel a little better this season. Um, but we'll know more once things go live and we can actually see the additions to the passive tree. There's 19 or so new passives. Um, I think that was like in each character zone. Hold on, let me see that. Uh, Where was that? It was somewhere here. There was something about they're adding more nodes to the thing, and I'm not sure if that was over on the right side of the board or if that was for each one. Um, but either way, it's going to be fun. Druids are going to eat good. Druids are still going to be the most fun build to play. Um, then, if you were using a high energy shield recharge rate, uh, probably just go to the flat ES, reroll ES on every piece of gear, and then drop all that regen stuff. Just stack enough that you can take hits and not die. Regen in between packs. Um, but that is all I have for you. Thanks for hanging out. Don't forget like, share, subscribe, all the nonsense, and see you next time.